on items that we as a committee should be looking at. So with that, we will get started by taking a look at the charter. I'm going to stop sharing screen. Hopefully all of you had an opportunity to look at the charter. I know some of our more seasoned members of the committee have seen this charter for a decade now and have been able to review it. It does outline and follow the template of the Office of the Comptroller and is well in line with all the regulations and guidelines. I'm curious if anyone had any changes that they wanted to make to the charter. I have a few, but I will reserve mine until after other members of the committee speak. So does anyone have any changes or modifications they wanted to make or comments? No?
Julie, I have one brief comment, and
Yeah.
We're in the time of COVID. So I just, you know, in terms of state regulations, we have not taken, or at least I have not taken the oath this year. I'm assuming COVID is an ameliorating factor there, but just wanted to bring that up.
Yes, I recognize that when going through the charter that we had not given the oath yet. Customarily, I think we would have given the oath after at least our first meeting, which we did not, or
Yes.
at least at the reorganizational meeting when you guys are appointed. So
Yes.
I apologize for that. This part was new to me until, you know, we came to the charter portion. So I think that we should ameliorate that and definitely have you all take the oath. I don't know if we're prepared to do it today. I'd like to get the charter formalized for this year's board and then do the oath at the next meeting. I know it's a little backwards, but
In these times,
unless we're prepared to, I don't have the oath in front of me. I don't know, Kathy, do you have the oath? Is it the same one that we use for the Board of Education?
I believe it is the same one that we use. I don't have it in front of me though.
Okay. All right.
there might be a 1 or 2 word difference. I forget.
Okay, so we'll definitely pull it up and make it a priority to have for the next meeting for everyone. But I appreciate that. Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions regarding the document? Okay, the only points that I wanted to point out is under the term section of our document, it says that each term is set for 1 year. I know most of you have been on this committee for longer than a year. I don't think it's realistic to expect people to be on the committee for only 1 year. So I would like to set some sort of at least broader term and potentially a staggered term. And then we would also have and include with that language that allows that you can have consecutive terms. My recommendation is that we could serve in staggered 3-year terms. That seems to be standard with other audit committees that I reviewed. And if a board member needs to serve less than 3 years because their term ends, we would incorporate language in as well to reflect that. In addition, I wanted to include language that says each member can serve consecutive terms because we were absent about that and we've certainly allowed members to serve consecutive terms. So if the committee is in agreement with adding language regarding terms and likes the suggestion I've had, we can incorporate that into the document and after the meeting, send it with that proposed language to then bring before the board. In that instance, any comments regarding the term?
Just a question, whether or not we go to 2 years instead of 3 years initially. I'm not opposed to 3 years, but I think if we go in steps, try 2 years first. And then if we want to go to 3 a year or 2 from now, then make a change.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith, I see you have your hand up. And then Mark.
Yeah, I think 3 years makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of the members have been on the committee for a long time and just getting it, I think that's good since there's a lot of institutional knowledge and we should just try to get it on a cycle so that, every year we have people turning over and that we have a public process for, finding, potential other candidates.
Yes, I agree with that. And Mark, your comment?
I have no objection in principle. I do wonder if you've run this by the board council.
I would run whatever we finalize. I would run by board council, but I did not run it by them in advance. I wanted to discuss it at the committee first.
The only reason I say that, I mean, first of all, we got this guidance from the state and from the New York State School Boards Association, so there may be a reason for that. And I will point out that all board committees, regular board committees, are, I believe, limited to 1 year. You're reappointed at the reorganization meeting every year. So I would just want to know if there's any reasons for this 1 year term that mean we have to stick with it. So I'd be interested in what council has to say.
Okay, I will definitely bring that back to council then before we make any final changes to it. But I am understanding that you're okay also if it's
Yes.
3 years, 2 years, as long as council is in agreement with that change. Since we have a couple people that feel 3 years is okay. I know we had one recommendation of 2 years. Can I just get a sense how many people are in favor of going with a 3 year term in the event that it is approved by council? And if not, we will stay with the 1 year term. So are you in agreement with that? Can I just have a show of hands? Okay, great. It passed with everyone. Wonderful. And we're okay with.
I'll just add an extra question to that.
Yeah.
Should there be, limits as to how many, number of terms, somebody can serve? And I guess the question is there a limit on, the school board?
No,
No.
but that's an elected position.
Okay.
But on the other hand, on a board committee, I mean, I know that some board members were heads of committees for years and years and years. There's no limits there.
Okay, yeah, because I'm one of the original members. I think Jim and also is. And I just don't know. Oh, okay, yeah, you switched from one side to the other, yeah.
Yep.
But just a question as to whether that's something that should be in here or not. I don't know the answer.
So I will use that again. Like I said, any changes that we make will run by council. So we'll make the recommendation about consecutive terms and see if we need to put a term limit on it. I believe Nikos has his hand raised. Nikos, I know he's having an audio issue. So I'll go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that occurs to me is board members do get appointed also. Now, would you want board members to have a more than 1 year term? And then you've got the, and in that case, I guess you'd have to sync it with the board member's term. But that's a separate question, whether that's allowed.
So that was the reason. I think if we include language, I think we can still say 3 years, which does align with the board member's term, but then add the caveat that if a board member's term expires, from their time of appointment on the audit committee to before their term is up, that's fine. They've served their requisite amount of years as board members. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
As long as
I
we
just want to hear what council has to say, but yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that's great. So I guess on the term, it seems to me we're all somewhat in agreement on adding in a greater than 1 year term. We said 3 years was acceptable as long as it's good with council. We'll ask them if we need to put a limit on consecutive terms. And in addition to that, put the language in about a board member if their term expires while they're serving on the committee and it's less than 3 years, how that will be handled. It was pointed out by Mark earlier today that the oath of office has not yet been administered, unfortunately, to our audit committee members. And so we will make that happen at the next meeting. And then last but not least, underneath composition and requisite skills to the charter, it talks about the members and the number. Currently, we are set at 9 members. I didn't know if we wanted to keep it at 9 or if we wanted to do something where we said 7 or 9, as long as it's an odd number. And in the event that for some reason, as we're cycling through terms, we don't get we don't get 9 members completely. And that composition would look, if it was 7 members, it would be 5 community members and 2 board members. Or if it was 9, it would be 6 community members and 3 board members. And we would put language in to reflect that, always signifying that it would have to be an odd number. Any comment on that? No? Are you okay if we propose that language then and put it into the document? And again, we'll include it as our final draft for council to review.
Yeah, I just have one question, maybe
Yeah.
could ask council. Obviously, this is an audit committee, I guess, under the state rules. Is it eventually migrate into an audit and risk committee?
I
You know,
don't
that's what's going on in the private sector. So that's just a question, not for now, but maybe for council or for future periods.
I will definitely look into that. I do not know the answer to that. It's a good question. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so then the plan here for the action plan that I have from this is I will make the changes we discussed, send it to council and have them mark up with their comments based on the questions, return to the committee so they can look at, and if everything's good, then we can put it up for the board to approve at a forthcoming meeting. If everyone's good. Okay, this is easy. You guys are a great group to work with. This is wonderful. The next thing we're going to do is Kathy's going to provide us, as you remember from our conversation last time, we had a discussion about engaging our auditors for a NIST and cybersecurity audit. That engagement was improved by the board and they have begun to work on it. So she's going to give us an update regarding that.
Sure. So I received from Naraki and Smith an update. Right now, they're currently working with Ryan Maloney, our Director of Technology, and Christine Weiss. They're gathering all of the information. They had a 21-page questionnaire that they provided to them. And Ryan, I know, has been sending a lot of the information to them. They have a meeting scheduled for January 14th. That's this Friday. Then they also have a part 2 meeting planned for January 28th. And then part 3 will be February 11th. They plan to have a draft report finished by like March 25th. So we should be able to present that. So Ryan has been, I know it's a lot of work, this whole process. So he's been terrific. And so has Christine Weiss. And Jessica has been working with them as well.
That's great, thank you. And for that draft report, is that for the NIST and cybersecurity audit, or is it, because I think the NIST audit was supposed to take a little more time.
Yeah, this for the draft is going to be the assessment of the cybersecurity procedures with the general controls and governance, information and asset security procedures, vulnerability assessment procedures, incident response and recovery procedures, and then they'll have recommendation and risk ratings. And then they'll have a detailed exhibit which talks about the organizational chart, the analysis of policies, and narratives of cybersecurity procedures. So I believe that the NIST is going to actually be part of that, but I will double check with him. I assumed it was.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Mark, yes.
Yeah, you say the report's finished March 25th. What are the steps after that? How is the report presented?
So they're going to come and they'll speak with management. They'll discuss it with everybody and take any comments into account. And then they'll have the draft report after that, which will come to the audit committee meeting.
On the end of April.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Mr. Smith.
And Kathy, are you expecting that all recommendations are going to be in that report, or do we then have to first start coming up with the mitigations for whatever they identify?
I'm sorry, what was that? Do I expect all of the recommendations?
The recommendations for how to mitigate their findings are going to be in that same report that they're going to present to us all at once, like budgets and things like that.
Yes, yes, that is the plan.
Great. Any other questions regarding that? All right, great. Well, we already have an April agenda item, so it's very good. All right, the other item that came out of our audits that we asked to look into were the high school clubs and their fiscal accounting and tracking of funds. I think, Jessica, you're going to present on that. Is that correct?
Sure.
Or is Kathy? Or Kathy, I'm sorry.
Actually, I'm going to handle that for you. Donna
okay.
Viola is also on this call.
Oh, hi,
She's
Donna.
our district treasurer, and she has been working closely with the central treasurer for the extra classroom account. So they did address, these three comments have been on the audit report for the last 3 years, I believe. So it was addressing cash receipts, the status of clubs that appear to be inactive, and also student ledgers. So Donna reviewed the pamphlet from the state that talks about the proper policies and procedures. They have a 3-part form to address the cash receipt so that there's so that it's uniform from each building and each club. They're going to review that with all of the clubs to make sure they understand that these are the procedures that should be followed. On a quarterly basis, they're going to have a ledger from each club that should be presented to the central treasurer, and that should be reconciled to make sure that everybody's books are correct. And each year they're going to look at the clubs and verify if they are indeed inactive or if they're just, because of COVID, some clubs have kind of been inactive. So, but there will definitely be much more oversight from the business office perspective, just requiring those ledgers. And I think it's going to be a good learning process for the students to actually be doing the ledgers. And that's really the purpose of the extra class account. So I thank Donna for all of her work that she's been doing with that. Donna, is there anything else like that I missed? What's that?
No, I do go to can you hear me?
I'm having a hard time hearing Donna. Is everyone else having a hard time?
Yeah.
Can you type your question, Donna, or your statement? Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think you have a bad connection. It's kind of every other word.
I'll type in chat.
Okay, I think she said she's typing it, but I'm not sure. While she's doing that, Dr. Block, I think you raised your hand. Yes?
Yeah, so I aired this last time and people did not agree with me. Of course, you're all accountants, so I would not expect you to agree with me. But these are a bunch of high school students, and I don't want to come up with overly restrictive precautions for amounts of money that end up being a couple of $100s here and a couple of $100s there. I don't want to encourage people not to join clubs because they're worried about a quarterly report that they have to do. So, and I think the amounts of money are just, they're in general immaterial. So I think we should create some kind of fudge factor where they are allowed to be within a reasonable amount. I don't want $10,000 coming and going without having some sense of where it's going. But if, you know, we have bake sales and, you know, $75 gets lost, I don't think we need to be stressing students out about, you know, accounting when they didn't sign up for accounting. If they were signing up for accounting, that would be one thing, but that is not what they're signing up for. And so I want us to consider options to make sure that students don't have to be overly concerned about this when they want to be planting shrubs in the Schreiber garden or doing community service.
Well, typically the role of the treasurer, the students are voted into that position, I think, from their, you know, the other club members. And it's really for the advisor to work with the students to teach it. And we do actually help them with their bank recs and things like that. So, but I completely understand your perspective.
Mark?
I'm not an accountant, by the way, but I do take the other side of that, which is, I mean, you're correct, Adam, that this is not fiscally material for the most part, but you're dealing with a potential for regulatory risk, number one, or I'm sorry, reputational risk, I mean, first of all, if something happens and it gets out. Second of all, one criticism that's been, I think, legitimately leveled at schools is they do not do enough education of students to train them for what they're going to have to do as they enter the world. And I think you would agree that eventually everybody needs to be able to, or should be able to manage finances at this basic level. So I think this is an important skill and also an important message to the students that this is important.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, did you want to respond, Dr. Block? Because I know Mr. Smith has his hand up.
He can go. He can go.
Okay, Mr. Smith, and then we'll go to Dr. Block. Oh, Mr. Smith, did you take your hand down?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Block.
So I'm just going to stick with my perspective. I'm not going to support this. I understand your perspective, both, Ms. O'Hara's and Mr. Marcellus's perspective. I just happen to not agree with them. I was a high school treasurer of a club, and it's not what I wanted to be doing. And it's one thing to have an overview of it. It's another thing to have to do it to perfection. And quite honestly, I was the HSA treasurer, right, Julie? And if Julie ever audited my accounts, she would not have liked what she saw. But it's a bit of a thankless job, and I don't think we should try to make it more thankless.
Okay, thank you. I also see Donna added in the chat. She plans to work with the high school treasurer in person and review our internal controls that will hopefully mitigate the significant deficiencies. I hear, Dr. Block, what you're saying. I think that this is something that has come up in audits, and it is also required that we at least make the attempt and that we try this. It doesn't sound that right now it's too fiscally burdensome, and that it sounds like as a nice plan has been put in place. It will help give financial education to our students as to how to deal with fiscal health on a day-to-day basis, which is something, to Mark's point, that they will have to do in the future outside of high school. So I think, can we keep this on our radar in that, to see how this is going and to see if we're finding it overly burdensome for the students. And we certainly don't want students to not be treasurers. We don't want them to not join clubs. We don't want them to be penalized by this. So if we're hearing and seeing that, if that can be, made to our attention, brought to our attention, I think we can modify if needed. But my only question also is, Ms. O'Hara, can you tell us, has this gone into effect already? The plans have already started working on this?
Well, Donna just met with the central treasurer, correct, Donna? Probably, I know last week they were trying to get together, but Donna's been out of the office for a little while. But this corrective action plan will go to the Board of Ed at the 25th meeting to be accepted by the Board of Ed, and then it'll get sent to the state. So we will be putting it in place just because we have to address any comments that are in the audit report. Then when the auditors come back next year, they're going to look at these to see what progress we've made, and they'll actually comment and update all of you on that again.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Kleinman.
Yeah, I think that we really should look to be somewhere in between in terms of position. I agree with Adam that it's not consequential, but this is something that comes up, almost all the time. My guess is that it's mandated by the state, and the internal auditors always cycle through and do this. So if it's something that needs to be done, I don't think you want to get cited for insufficiencies and have to go over and over again saying what you're going to do. You need to come up with something that's reasonable, that will satisfy the internal auditors without being onerous on the members of each club.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it sounds like that's the plan that's proposed. I guess it's yet to be seen once it's put into action, how onerous it is or isn't. So we'll move forward and see how this progresses. I'll put a tickler on there as well. So check back in. All right, wonderful. If there are any further questions with it, statements. All right, wonderful. We're moving on to the mental health audit update.
Sure. So I'm not sure if you all remember, but on October 19th, we had the Office of the State Comptroller come to the district. They met with the superintendent or board president and vice president, myself and Stephanie Allen, and they wanted to address mental health training that the school provides. there were 26 school districts that were being audited. So a report is going to be coming out with all of the schools in it, and just to speak about their findings. This is something that all schools should be providing. So I think the state is trying to make schools aware of their duty to provide this and make sure that it's documented. We actually received a call just yesterday about the exit conference. So it's planned for January 19th. It's going to be a virtual conference, and that's when they'll discuss any findings and recommendations that they may have.
All right, wonderful. Any questions on that? Okay, so it looks like we'll hear more about that after that exit strategy. Some more to come. Last but not least on our agenda for today we talked about audit suggestions of things that we as a committee would like to look at moving forward to put into the cycle for audit items. Nico suggested the idea of looking at climate change preparedness and our fiscal planning for the future. I don't know if, I know Nikos is on and he's having an issue with audio, so I don't know if he can type any more into the chat if he wants to expound on it at all. But I know Ms. O'Hara, her office has already been looking into some of this. So in the interest of time and to expound upon it a little bit more, can you give the committee a little bit of an idea of what your office has been doing, Ms. O'Hara?
Sure. So after that huge storm that we had so much damage from it, Hurricane Ida. The flooding that happened at the middle school, we had an engineer come in and work with our architect. We saw that some of the reservoirs to catch the water were not connected properly. So we actually worked with the vendor who actually did the work, and they're going to be taking it up and connecting it so that if it does flood again, it'll have proper drainage to get out. They've also looked at the buildings where water came into some of the gymnasiums, and they're trying to find solutions for that as well. So it is an issue that we need to be looking at. And the district it's just when there's extreme weather, that's when things really become evident what's happening. So, but having a 5-year capital plan and working with our architect throughout the district has really been helpful. But I think that's something that would down the road be very helpful.
So, Ms. O'Hara, in addition to like our analysis that we do through our insurance companies, which addresses some of this as well, are you forecasting then within the 5-year plan some of these items? Is that what you're trying to say as well?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Anything in regards to that? Does everyone agree this is something we should be looking at as a committee? Okay, and then Nikos has added something in the chat where he's expressed, is there any thought about reserves to prepare for unexpected costs by climate-related events? Oh, this is very interesting, maybe. So at last night's board meeting, there was the question of whether or not we should create capital reserves. I don't know if this would fall under that category, but for capital reserves to be created, you have to set a time, a purpose, and an amount. I know that you do have to have a vote in order to take the money out for capital reserves, but maybe this would be something that we would want to look at as a specific directive for capital reserves are for unexpected capital costs and expenditures due to climate-related events. Could we do that, Kathy, or is that not allowed?
Actually, there is a capital repair reserve that could be set up, and the district had kind of discussed that earlier. That does require voter approval as well. So, but it doesn't have to be specific. And if it's a repair that's caused by extreme weather, that could be something that we could use it for. I can definitely look into that and speak to our auditors to make sure that that's something we could do.
So, and then on a capital repair reserve, it would be that we could use it for any capital repairs, not just those that are damaged by extreme weather. So it would
Correct.
serve a broader scope and purpose then, and then also address this issue as well.
Correct. And I believe to actually expend the funds, you just have to have a vote by the board. You don't have to go out and receive
Oh.
public approval to spend it because you have the repair reserve set up.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. Are there any thoughts in regards to that then? Or on this topic at all? This is a quiet group today. Oh, Mark, go right ahead.
And this is really a board matter, but I guess the one thing to consider about that, since you have to put it toward the voters, whether framing it as something that would be to address issues caused by climate change and other structural issues or something like that, to send the message that's how you're thinking. In this political climate, I don't know if that'd be a good thing or a bad thing, but that's something to consider about how you'd want to frame it when you put it up for a vote.
Well, it sounds like I'm sorry, because I think I confused two of the issues. Kathy already clarified that we have a capital repair reserve that's already in existence that this could handle, and we would only have to have the board vote on it when they wanted to take funds out. Is that correct? Did I?
No, you actually need voter approval to actually establish the reserve, because I believe you had one established a while ago, but I don't know that it was ever actually voter approved.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I thought I was on the same path. I thought you had said we had one that was already approved. So in other words,
Right.
we would have to still set it up on our May ballot for this year for
Correct.
voter approval, but then the extraction of the money is just the budget, or the board is approving that. Okay. That's a good point also. Yes, I don't know. This is something that, again, we can bring back to the board. I don't know if this committee feels strongly one way or another, but we were talking about capital reserve accounts. I can make sure that in budget and facilities, I can inform them, and Mr. Smith is the chair of that committee. We can talk about this as a possibility as well.
I think we have the whole committee's here.
Yeah, the whole committee is here. So it's great. We can bring it up and make the, a recommendation to board if we think this is the appropriate capital reserve to start, and if that's something that we want to move forward with. So this is great. Okay. Is there any, yes, Mr. Kleiman?
Yeah, on setting up a reserve for this, I think it's a political hotspot, but I think the way to maybe get around it is the next time the board is considering an overall bond issue to include some amount to set up a repair reserve, that this can be included in. So it's not the hot button and it's just part of normal procedure. It may be a number of years till you do it, but something you should just have on the radar.
Well, actually, a bond has to be defined what you're going to spend the funds on. So you can't have excess money to just put in another reserve. It has to be strictly defined and only spent in that manner.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree with the
I
statement?
agree with the statement that you really couldn't, it would be difficult to do this in a bond because you're so restricted. This really needs to be something that would go into a capital reserve.
Right. Something, and if we had surplus funds, we could fund either this reserve or a capital reserve.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. All right, wonderful. Were there any other items that we as a committee want to look at and explore for the future? No, at this, oh, yes, Mr. Smith.
Julie, do you want to talk about that issue that we had discussed a couple of weeks ago about just like looking at like district contracts and things like that, not in a general sense, not the specific sense?
So we can definitely talk about that. It is a possibility of, if as an audit committee, we can ask that our district contracts, our facility use agreements are evaluated for compliance and fee collection and how they work. At this time, if we don't feel that we want to take that on, I'm actually okay with setting So here's how I'm looking at the audit committee. I guess I should back up for a second. And I don't know if everyone agrees with this. This committee, at least the 3 board members on this committee have never been a part of it. I know we have, the rest of you have been longstanding community members, former board members, and have a lot of experience. But as we're moving forward, we're trying to do things very proactively, the right way. We do our charter on an annual basis, be involved in the RFP for our internal and external auditors, and make sure that the board is apprised of all of those things. I'm not sure that all of that has happened as regularly as we would have liked it to. And so we're trying to do things in that manner. That being said, we're taking these first 2 to 3 meetings out of our 4 meetings of the year to establish ourselves again, establish our priorities. And it's my thought process that by our April meeting and then again by our June meeting, we'll be fairly well established with our foundation. And we can then start setting those priorities for the committee to look forward and say, for the following year of 2022 and 2023, these are enumerated audits that we would like you to look into, in addition to what comes up out of our external and internal audits. If everyone's in agreement, and in that case, I would ask that this recommendation of looking at our facility use agreements and other contracts, that be put, forecasted for that kind of list of priorities for the upcoming year of 2022, 2023. Ms. O'Hara, I see your hand up. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, so that's something you would typically give to the internal auditor. Right now, they're doing the cybersecurity audit. So, and they could have they were scheduled to do a different audit, but we decided it was best for them to focus completely on the cybersecurity. So something like that, and any other initiatives that by June we come up with, that would be a discussion with the internal auditors, and then they would perform that audit at your request. So it's a good utilization of them.
That's great. Then that kind of fits in with the timeline that I outlined. So that's wonderful. All right. So if everyone's in agreement with that, I think then the way I'm seeing it is that for our next meeting in April, we'll start that punch list of what we want our auditors to be looking at, so that we can have those conversations with them in June, and they can.
And that would be then for the following school year, I guess.
Yeah. Yes.
And actually, I did look into when these auditors had started. Typically, it's they'll do a 1-year audit, and then you can renew it for up to 4 years. So we actually have 2 more years before we are required to go out for an RFP for both internal and external auditors.
So then would we go out for the RFP then next year in 2024, or no, the following year?
The following year.
Okay.
Usually like in April, you would go out for an RFP.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so we'll put that on our list as well. We'll all be in there. It's that 3-year, well, I guess it's that 3-year time period still, so we'll all still be here. Okay, wonderful. Does everyone agree with that recommendation about, so what I'm seeing is our action items from today, because I think we're coming to a close unless anyone has any new business, is our action items for today are that I will make the changes that we discussed here, run for the charter, run it by council to make sure that we are in compliance, submit the document to this committee for review in advance with the notes from the attorney, if any. In addition to that, we should, for our April meeting, have an update on the NIST and cybersecurity audit that we will be able to review at that April meeting. We'll also start having conversations for what we want the internal auditors to look at. And then we will bring for the budget committee the conversation that we had about the capital repair reserve as it related to a long-term plan of climate change preparedness. Does everyone see that as our action items? Mark's good, yes? Climate's good, okay, excellent. Does anyone, oh, yes, Mark.
Just a quick question. What is the date of the June meeting?
that's the last thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay,
So right now we have the April meeting is scheduled for April 26th. Hold on, I'm pulling that up. April 26th, and the June meeting is set for June 7th. I have to tell you, I personally have a conflict with us hosting our meetings on Tuesdays, because especially the Tuesdays that we have a board meeting, because I'm called into agenda meetings to finalize sometimes agenda items, and it makes it difficult to do both of these meetings at the same time. So I'm wondering if we can move the April 26th and the June 7th meeting, since those both fall on Tuesdays, to just the Wednesday after, which is April 27th and June 8th. Does anyone have a conflict with that, or suggest another date? Does anyone have a conflict with that?
I just have a conflict with the June 8th one. I have a
Okay.
nutrition committee meeting.
Okay. What if we moved it to June 15th, then the following, or I didn't check my calendar. I should probably look at that. I have to see if there's there's sometimes on Wednesdays, there's policy meetings. We have a policy meeting on the 15th. Or we could look at June 1st if we wanted to. If Wednesdays are good, Nico said Wednesdays are good for him. I don't know how they work for everyone else. Does like a June 1st work okay with everyone?
Works for me.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so then if everyone's good, we're going to change our meeting dates to April 27th at 9 a.m. and June 1st at 9 a.m. All good? All right. Wonderful. Thank you all again for taking the time to meet, and I appreciate all of the comments. We do have some community members that are in attendance, so I will just switch over to them for just a second to see if anyone has any questions. So if you are a community member and you have a question, if you just raise your hand, we're happy to address them in community comments. It looks like they have no questions for us. So with that being said, I hope you guys can go out and enjoy your day. Thank you for spending your morning with us. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.